Hello everyone, this is Christian from Breakscape Games, and today I'm going to be going over all of the changes to our next release to Decomposed, called Decomposed 2.0. We're calling it 2.0 because we have a lot of dramatic changes both to the core mechanics of the game, pretty much everything you interact with and grab, as well as new puzzles, reworked puzzles, and totally new zones. So let's get started. I'm going to be doing this in two parts. This is Volume 1, I'll be doing another part for Volume 2. And I'll actually be doing a third part just to quickly go over some of the GM tools changes that we've made to help make the Game Master job easier. So let's get started. I'm going to be playing with my mouse and my keyboard just to make it a bit easier to talk into the mic, but otherwise it should look familiar. I'm also going to be playing with a kind of hybrid player and Game Master view here. So the player will be playing with the same thing that the Game Master normally sees, like the timer and stuff like this. The timer is also new. So let's get started. So no real changes here to the intro other than the entirely redesigned piano room. Although familiar, it does have a lot of new looks. We'll be going over that more in Volume 2, so I'm going to skip it for now. We've also added the ability to skip, as the Game Master, the entire introduction if you need to for any reason. So let's go ahead and do that. The rest of the intro is the same as you're familiar with. Yeah, so the puzzle here is the same, or the puzzles here in the attic are the same. There's no changes here. Some of the changes we can go over, so I'm just going to unshackle myself. It's a bit easier than trying to do it with the keyboard. You'll notice that the grab highlighting is a little bit different. It's an outline highlighter, a little more obvious than the player color that used to be there. So that should be an improvement. We've also changed the teleport mechanic. So instead of the red line here, or the red and green line, that's a straight line coming out of the finger, we've made it a little bit more of a kind of industry accepted standard, which is the Bezier curve kind of fishing line style teleports. It's a little bit easier to use than the other one, and we've also changed the button to use the thumb pad for both the Vive and the Oculus, as opposed to the trigger or the menu button on the Vive. So that should also be a lot easier to use for players, especially for the Vive. The button is like 10 times the size. So yeah, you're teleporting around. Nothing's really changed here. The puzzles are all the same, so we still have the album cover combining. It's slightly different combining here, but basically the same, slightly different animation and stuff like that, but basically the same. So I'm just gonna leave that. I'll skip this puzzle, or I'll skip this room because these puzzles are all the same. So no changes here in the attic, other than obviously the core mechanics of the game. And bear with me as I use my mouse and keyboard. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the real changes in Volume 1. We have redesigned, so the changes to the maze are basically, instead of having the often confusing sound mechanic where the player would kind of figure out what hallway to go down based on sound, which most players didn't really do, frankly. They just figured it out based on sheer luck. We've basically changed that, so the first two rooms are now going to be driven by what we're calling kind of visual landmarks. So each room has a very unique look to it. Same layout as before in terms of hallways, but every room, or the first two rooms, are going to be very unique. So this is kind of a storage room. We've got some boxes and crates, as well as some shelving. So same mechanics as before. If you go down the wrong hallway here, we're going to end up back where we started. This is the hallway we came down. So yeah, 3 of the hallways are incorrect, and the 4th hallway, the correct hallway, which is this one, with the shelving on the left, this will bring you. So this used to be sound. There's no more sound. It is just kind of trial and error for the first players. And then once they find the puzzle, or once they find the correct hallway, they're going to say, okay, take the hallway with the shelves. And we've been testing this with players, and they actually get through the maze much quicker now. So we're trying to make the maze, the infinite maze portion of the puzzle much quicker, because we have a whole new zone that we're going to get into, and we want people to focus on that. So again, this is the second room. So if you go down the wrong hallway again, we're going to end up back in the first room. So hopefully a lot more easy to figure out where you are. Players seem to get it much quicker now, as opposed to before, where you only had 1 or 2 little things in each room, and a lot of players didn't even notice that they were different. So we'll go down this hallway, and then the correct hallway here is the one with the snake beside it. So we'll go down this one. And this is where things start to get very different. So this hallway, you'll see, leads into a completely new zone, which we call the library. Also, once players enter it, we don't really want players to get lost, right? So often when you would enter the maze room, where the levers were before, you would end up getting kind of distracted, maybe lose your focus, and end up back in the first room. You might not even know you're in a different room. So this one is very clear. Also, once all players enter, the doors close behind you, so players cannot return. So the idea is once all the players enter in here, we lock them in and we focus their attention on the puzzles at hand. So this is, a totally new zone. We've got a hole in the ceiling with some water falling down. We've got these statues with their hands held out. These ones seem to have some things in their hands, some bowls. We have this big kind of pedestal at the window, or this table at the window. There's clearly some kind of puzzle going on here with the different logos or the different icons. And okay, so those hands, those look familiar. It might be a little hard to see outside of VR. The lighting is better in the game. It's meant to be a little dark, but there's this big table in the middle here. So that looks kind of like what we're seeing on this pedestal. So again, spoilers. So this is a kind of walkthrough. So if you don't want to see the puzzle solutions, then stop watching. But here we go. So the solution to this puzzle, or the whole puzzle here, is meant to be kind of a 6 element puzzle. So we have to offer up the elements. So we have fire here with the little flames, water, earth, these are meant to be stones, and wind. And we also have life and death because we wanted to have 6 for each player. Now there's no restriction on what player is going to solve these puzzles. Every player can do it in any order they want, but we've added enough to try and make everybody involved. So let's say the first thing people say, they realize that this looks kind of like fire. We do have these candles here. Okay, there's a bunch of candles everywhere, but there's fire, and then you'll notice here. So we have these 6 icons, which correspond to the 3 on either side. And on our left here, we have fire, death, and water. And on the right, we have earth, wind, and life. So what this actually corresponds to is the monk statues that are circling the table, or on either side of the table. So fire, death, and water correspond to fire, death, and water. So let's start with water, because there's clearly some rain coming through the ceiling over here. And also, interestingly enough, this monk seems to be the only one who does not have a bowl in his hand. So if players start investigating, this is meant to kind of be the first 2 most obvious ones. They'll say, oh look, I can pick up a bowl off the ground here. And if they walk over, we have this new mechanic, which is kind of a snap zone. So you can kind of drop it in. So players, if they have to put something in a specific spot, will know. So if I let go of that, oh, hello, we have clearly some sort of change here. The monk is now holding a flaming bowl, which is our indication that this element has been done. So let's do fire next. So if the players are looking around, they're going to eventually find these torches. There's a couple of them. It's also meant to be, there's a few over here, you can see. It's also meant to be kind of a fun mechanic for players to fool around with, but not too much. And they can actually light the torch on any candle, and they can also light other torches with lit torches. So this will help both in looking around, maybe in the dark corners, seeing if they can find anything which they'll need to for other puzzles. But eventually we need to use this flame to light. So if players are going around, this is not the right bowl, not the right bowl. And come back here, we say, okay, fire is the first bowl, or number 1. Let's call that position number 1, 2, 3. So we'll say 1 is fire. So this is 1. And there we go. We lit the fire. So players will continue to do it. So again, it's an element puzzle. Players might be figuring this out at that point. So we have death to do on the left side, and over here we have the skull. So we'll bring that and we'll throw that into the death bowl. Oops. Okay. And likewise, on the other side, we have earth. So players are going to eventually find these little rocks on the ground. Bring that and put that in earth. This is earth here. Again, based on earth and earth. And now we're going to do wind. Now this one's a little awkward to do with my keyboard and mouse because it's a lot better to do in VR. But we're effectively going to fan. There's a hand fan here, and in case people don't know what the hand fan is, they're going to see this picture, hopefully getting a better idea that this is in fact a hand fan. We'll see. Players don't seem to have trouble with that so far yet. A lot of players have figured it out pretty quickly. So we have earth, wind, and life left. So life is going to be hidden over here. Got a little heart in a crystal. So we'll go ahead, kind of mimicking, or kind of the opposite of the skull. So we'll go over here, put that here. So in doing so, hello, what have we done here? So we have lit a large kind of center altar has been activated in some way. And the final hint here is going to be, so if players walk up, they might notice, hey, look, things appear as I get close. But again, the little hint here is going to be that put your hands around all of these altar pedestals. So depending on the number of players, they can pick any pedestal they want. You can also, just because they will be teleporting, they're not going to be moving around with a mouse and keyboard like me, you can also go to that specific place by teleporting into these kind of new, so in a few spots around the game where we want players to lock in. We don't want it to be too obvious, but we want to be able to let them teleport in and kind of line up. So all players are going to need to do the following steps. So the idea is you're going to put your hands in here. You're going to hear a whisper. It might be very faint. And as you put both your hands, you'll see that these swords start to summon. So all the players have to have their hands in these runes that are going to activate when you get close. And all players must kind of hold their hands there to complete the summoning ritual. So all the players are doing that, and looking around, the swords start to rise. And we are transported, seemingly back in time to perhaps when this maze, or excuse me, when this library was kind of a more active and used place. So we're going to look around and we're going to see there are lots of books on the shelves. There's also a new pedestal here up front with seemingly similar, familiar yet different puzzles to solve. And to make it a little simpler, we've kind of kept the books. We had played with the idea of keeping the books on the shelves, and it was just taking players too long. So we've put the books floating in the monk's hands. And if players grab the book, they're going to notice that on the front of each book, there's a unique symbol, which corresponds to the symbols up here. So again, not too tricky of a puzzle, but this one is meant to basically say, okay, this symbol here is number 2. So we'll see the book here, number 2 matches. And if you look at the pedestals here, or excuse me, like the podiums, you'll see that there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so if we put 2 down, we will see some sort of rune activation. Interesting. So this is kind of a Doctor Strange inspired type puzzle. And it's not too complicated. Again, at this point, we're trying to keep players moving, keep them trying new mechanics, and most importantly, try and giving everybody a chance to do something. So if it's a 2-player game, they're going to just have to do this 6 times. Maybe 3 each, whereas if it's a 6-player game, hopefully everybody gets a chance to do it. However, if there's a player who's having a bit more difficulty, the other players can solve these tasks. So again, there's no tasks that need to be done by any specific player in the game anymore. So again, this is similar, so they can use their little teleport here to get here. And the puzzle here is simply to match the center rune, so there's 2 parts to each rune, with the options out here. So if we grab the wrong option here and we bring it through, again, a little awkward with the mouse and keyboard, nothing seems to be happening. But if we grab the correct rune here, which is this one, and match it to the center, it locks in. And we're going to do that again for the outer runes. So a little hard to see here. So yeah, it's this one up here in the top left. Okay, so those options have gone away. I can't interact with anything anymore, and this sword has lit up in the center of the table. So this is kind of indicating that this one is done. And at this point, basically all the players are going to have to repeat it. So again, you're going to grab your book, you're going to look at the symbol, you're going to go over here, and you're going to match it. So this is number 6. So not meant to be too hard, not meant to take too long, but just trying to get players through it. So I'm going to just skip ahead. I'm going to put all these books for you. As always, the Game Master has the ability to kind of skip any specific step or help players who are having trouble. So I'm going to combine all these runes very quickly here, doing the same thing I just did on each station. And now the lights are flickering. I hear some laughing. And ooh, this is different. Uh-oh, this is now on fire. So, similar to kind of the ending of the old maze, we're kind of presented with this hall, or this elevator, and this part will be familiar to somebody who's played before. And our Hans is here to chase us out of Volume 1.
I must have your souls.
So that's the end of, that's the end of all the changes to Volume 1. I'll go into another video here and go over Volume 2.